Well, when I signed up, I'd heard about Uber first, and I thought, well, I'll go try this out and see what happens. And I'm retired. Hopefully, I have enough savings. I'll be cool anyway. And so I didn't even ask how much they paid. I just thought, people are doing this, I'll try it. And so it didn't take me too long to find out that we were getting 57.5 cents a mile only when there's a passenger in the car. And you can deduct 58 cents a mile for all business miles from your income taxes. So that kind of told me I wasn't making much, but then they're also paying 15 cents an hour, 15.75 cents, I guess, which is less than, well, a little over $9 an hour and less than state minimum wage. Hey, all right. And so I was like, I'm not making much money doing this. And, I was only doing it part-time and retired. I was doing it more just for the fun of it than anything else. And I had a pickup truck I was using. It was a few years old, probably not the best vehicle for this Uber Lyft. And then a year ago, I bought an electric vehicle and was using that. So at least my fuel charges weren't anywhere near as much. But I mean, you realize all the miles you're putting on this vehicle, by the time I wear it out, I will not have made enough money to buy another one. Wow. It's like, well, so what's the point of doing this? And you if they were paying a decent amount of money, it would be worth it. And I really don't know how the economics, as far as they got to pay a bunch of computer programmers that maybe Yellow Cab doesn't have to pay. But then again, they don't maintain the facilities at Yellow Cab facilities. So maybe the whole system would work under a decent pay schedule, treating us as employees, where my understanding is in California, we would be required, or they would be required to reimburse us at a mileage rate equal to what's deductible, plus minimum wages. Plus we would have workman's compensation. If you get in an accident and get hurt while you're doing Uber Lyft driving, I'm sure there's drivers that have found out the hard way. The Uber Lyft insurance doesn't cover medical expenses. Your own car insurance, unless you have AAA, which charges quite a bit to be covered on Uber and Lyft to get a rider to cover you. I have AAA, that's why I say that, and I did actually pay. Cost me almost twice as much per year when I have Uber and Lyft on my insurance policy. And but drivers, there's probably some out there that found out the hard way what happens if you get in an accident. And then when this coronavirus come along, a lot of drivers discovering they're not eligible for unemployment, which just makes things worse. And then again, I think most drivers are deducting almost all the money they receive as drivers between the mileage rate and expenses, other expenses they might be able to deduct. And so I think to a lot of drivers, especially younger ones, it seems like free money. They don't have to pay taxes on it, and they don't realize they're not contributing much, if anything, to Social Security either, which will affect them when they're too old to work or too disabled to work. And so when I notice there's something wrong, and the bigger picture I see is that ever since the 1930s, big business and the money grubbers have been upset about workers' rights and been doing everything they can to limit or end workers' rights, whether you're talking about the right to join a union, the Social Security system, unemployment insurance, disability insurance, workman's comp. All of that costs money. And the money grubbers, they don't care about us. They only care about their money. And since they only care about their money, they could care less what happens to us when we get too old to work, or somehow end up too disabled to work, or at a time like this, unable to work. And I see Proposition 22 as just one more push by the obscenely wealthy to put a stop to workers' rights. And my understanding is there's a clause in Proposition 22 that before the people or the legislature, or I don't know if it's both or either one, but it requires a 3/4, 75% majority, I think it is, to change Proposition 22. And it's like, that's like a poison pill. They want to cement this method of ending all workers' rights into the law where it can't be changed. And if you care at all about workers' rights, if you care at all about things like workman's comp, Social Security, unemployment insurance, health insurance on the job, because that's just another one they're going to attack. You know, it may not be getting attacked in Proposition 22, but you know darn well they're just attacking everything, taking every benefit away from workers they can. Minimum wage. There is no minimum wage for independent contractors. And I spent a lot of years as owner-operator truck driver, theoretically independent contractor. But at least in that industry, they had to pay owner-operators more or less enough to support the ownership of the truck, along with have enough left over afterwards to support yourself or your family. And you know, maybe some of these young people doing Uber and Lyft 60, 80 hours a week are scraping by, and that's why some of them may not be real eager to vote no, because they're just worried about the change. And Uber and Lyft have been lying to us, trying to fool us, with their with their yes on 22 bleep. And all I have to say is they're not going to make things better. You vote yes on 22, they're guaranteeing a mileage rate from the time you accept a rider at 30 cents a mile. It's about half of what you're getting now. And how anybody expects to make money at 30 cents a mile is beyond me. And maybe they'll give you a few pennies more per minute, but I guarantee you they've done the math with their computers, and they know that if anything, they're going to be paying you less than they're paying you right now. That's what they're in it for. They're not in it to help you as a driver. And so I ask all people that watch this video, please vote no on 22. It's just another game by the uber wealthy to put the screws to workers. And we need to teach them, no, at least in the state of California, we respect all people. And we think all people who are working should be able to earn a decent living. And no on 22 helps that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Joe.
There.
Can I ask you one more question?
Sure.
What do you think about Uber and Lyft and Yes on 22's argument about flexibility?
Right now, we have that flexibility, and I know a lot of drivers are concerned about losing it. From what little I've read, there's nothing in the labor law now that would prevent us from working the same flexible schedules. I think a lot of drivers may think if when we become employees, Uber and Lyft would have to pay us for our waiting time when we don't have a ride request. And it would be difficult to have the total flexibility we have now and pay everyone for their waiting time. For instance, I live out in a small farm community away from Sacramento, Heck, I could just turn on the app first thing in the morning and nobody needs a ride nearby. I could get paid minimum wage just for sitting at home all day. I don't think so.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's something in the labor law that would force them to pay for that kind of time, the simple solution is for us to organize a union and have it right there in the union contract, that we have that flexibility, but we're not going to get paid for standby time, because I understand that would be a burden. And similarly with overtime, a union contract can override the labor law requiring overtime as long as the union members agree to it. So we could agree to work more than 40 hours a week without overtime if we had an organized union. So the flexibility, the potential for flexibility is there with no on 22. And the companies are just using their propaganda saying we would lose the flexibility because they know that's an important point for most drivers, having that flexibility. It's there, we can keep the flexibility, but working for 30 cents a mile isn't going to do anybody any good.
Sounds like an empty threat.
An empty threat would be a good way to describe it.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Joe.